Hey everyone, happy Thursday. We're in a new month, and June, as far as health awareness months go, has several things, including Men's Health Month, migraines, and headache awareness. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about headaches and migraines and food, how that might play an impact, what foods to be looking for to consume. Then we'll certainly get to foods that we may need to stay away from or certain food components later this episode or maybe a whole different episode. And Chris should be joining soon. He's currently helping patients. So first one up is almonds. A very easy to find, easy to snack on food that provides a lot of nutrition, including magnesium. And we've talked a little bit about magnesium. This little mineral is frequently finding its way in the headlines because it has an impact on hundreds of chemical reactions in the body. So every time you're snacking on almonds, you're boosting your magnesium intake, which can help reduce the risk of migraines and headaches. Now, there is certainly a difference between a headache and a migraine. Migraine can be much more debilitating with more light sensitivity and may make someone miss work. It can be really excruciating. There can be spasms in the blood vessels in the brain, and there can be vasoconstriction, cutting off blood flow. All kinds of different things can happen during a migraine. Someone can be nauseous, and that might not happen during a headache. So some of the things I'll be talking today apply to both prevention of headaches and migraines. So almonds are a fantastic source of magnesium. They also have fiber and healthy fats. Fiber obviously keeps our blood sugar more stable, and blood sugar stability has been shown to improve headaches and migraines and maybe reduce the risk. So if our blood sugar is going on a roller coaster because we're eating too much sugar or too many refined carbohydrates, not enough fiber, not enough healthy fats, not enough protein, then we can mitigate that with some healthy food intake like almonds. And that goes for other nuts and seeds, certainly. Another great source would be pumpkin seeds, which have a great magnesium content. I personally really like the pepitas, which are pumpkin seeds that have been deshelled, making it really easy to throw into a trail mix or top on a salad. And so that's one of my favorite sources of magnesium. Another great food for magnesium, or excuse me, for migraine or headache prevention are cherries. And cherries have antioxidants similar to those in other red fruits and vegetables that help with controlling blood pressure, but it's their vasodilation effects that can help to ease or reduce the risk of headaches and migraines. So cherries, when they're not candied or anything like that, would be a good option, along with other fruits and vegetables. But that one in particular has been really good. Another one that's similar would be beets or even beetroot juice, which is a bit more common because I don't know of a ton of people that eat beets. Some people love beets. You may not know this, but you can actually throw beets just right into the oven for quite a while. It takes them quite a while to roast. And then the peeling of the beet comes off really easily, and then you can cut into it and season it. So it's a really super easy way to get some beets in. Underrated vegetable there. Another food or food category is fish, especially any fish that has more omega-3 fatty acids. Of course, we know omega-3s are great for our heart health and reducing inflammation. They're great for brain health, and they may help to reduce migraines or headaches. And it's those omega-3s that have that anti-inflammatory effect. always bring these up because Americans don't tend to get a lot of fish consumption, especially if you don't live by a coast. And most of the fish that I see people getting around here is fried catfish, which tastes so good to some people. I'm not such a big fan. I actually love baked catfish. But whitefish like catfish and tilapia have some omega-3s, but not a lot. So challenge yourself if you can, if you're not allergic to fish or have any problems. Challenge yourself to get more of the high omega-3 rich fish like salmon or tuna, trout. And if you're brave, and it's totally worth trying this, sardines. Sardines canned in oil taste better than canned in water. Great source of calcium, great source of omega-3s, protein. So really good actually on a salad or with crackers. So sardines plus whole grain crackers are actually a really tasty snack. But again, that's for the brave. So omega-3s, magnesium, and then other antioxidant rich fruits and vegetables such as cherries and beets. Keeping our blood sugar stable, like I said, is also important. And of course, that comes down to our macronutrient intake, how many carbs we're eating, how many fats, how much protein. There's been a lot of different ratios that have been thrown out there as far as the ideal macros, but that's really dependent on the person. That's very much a personalized conversation. Ideally, you can be having that conversation with a dietitian, or you can reach out to a dietitian just for that question alone. Maybe you don't even need to have sessions, but at least getting their opinion or reading some evidence-based articles on that. My personal opinion, again, is that it's personalized, but if I had to evaluate the standard macros that are thrown around, which is 45 to 65% coming from carbs, I would say for the average person, especially one that is not super active, to go a little bit lower on that range. So maybe 40 or 45, 50% of your carbs or your calories coming from carbs. I think 65% is pretty high because that's going to limit what you can get from protein and fats. Protein, probably at least 20 to 25, maybe 30% of that coming from them. So yeah, I see Dr. Chris joining. See, how do I add him? Chris, do you know how to add? There we go. I just got the add to stage thing. I was like, it can't be that bad. What's up?
What's up? I'm here. Had an emergency doctor situation with one of Dr. Grant's patients, and the scan looked okay, but she's in a little bit of a neck spasm right now. So one of the worst things to do, stress into a neck spasm. Really is. Don't do that.
Good job helping out with that. Taking care of people.
Yep. Taught her some like lacrosse ball active release stuff for her trap and neck to try out over these next few days, and then get her back in here next week and see how that. So that's what I've been up to, and that's why I've been late. But what you been going in on? I interrupted your flow. Keep going.
No, I was. It was actually good timing. Just briefly, I talked about the main foods, although there's other foods that have some of these things. So it's more about the food groups. But almonds, because their magnesium content, magnesium can prevent or reduce your risk of migraines. Cherries, because of their abundant antioxidant profile. Similar to beets and beetroot juice, they have some of the same compounds. And then salmon and other omega-3 rich foods. Maintaining your blood sugar, because blood sugar that is all over the place can increase your risks of migraines or headaches. And then the last thing is hydration. Staying well hydrated is extremely important. And talk just briefly, although you're much more knowledgeable about this, briefly about the differences between headache and migraine. So migraines obviously quite a bit different, usually more debilitating, can cause nausea, really knock someone out. And headaches might just be something we can get over and push through, whereas a migraine, it's not quite that easy.
Yeah. Headaches, migraines. I mean, there's a lot of things going on in terms of head pain. You got like vestibular migraines, ocular, hemiplegic, cluster headaches, cervicogenic headaches. So it's all different types of presentation. It's just more so trying to figure out what's actually causing it in the first place.
Right.
And with migraines, a big component of that is fluid flow, especially blood flow. Yeah. Basically, a migraine and a headache is it's our brain cells saying, I need oxygen. How do you get it? The reason why it's not getting it is due to lack of blood flow getting to that brain cell. More than often due to a misalignment top of the neck. But also it could be accumulation of stressors occurring in the body that are causing the nervous system to be stuck in that stress state, which can thus manifest migraines. So kind of thinking about that, association with food, I got my doctor hat on right now. And so we're talking about almonds, cherries, salmon. You mentioned another fruit, I think.
Beets are a vegetable that, beets.
Yep. And cranberry, right?
Yeah, those are all sources of antioxidants. I like just, if at all possible, fruits and vegetables in their own nature package of the whole thing. So incorporating beets and just beets alone, you're going to get all of the fiber, and you're not missing out on anything. So nothing wrong with some juices, but then you're just getting a whole lot of sugar all at once. And as far as, again, if blood sugar we want to maintain, and we're about to get a huge dose of sugar from that juice, then that might be counterproductive. But yeah.
So with antioxidants or any of those foods, do any of those foods cause vasodilation?
Yeah, absolutely, especially the beets and the cherries. So that's why they're also, that's why they're so good for keeping blood pressure under control. And they're so good for heart health. And that's why like the red fruits and vegetables, or the red purple ones, are so synonymous with heart health. Red wine. One of the antioxidants they have is resveratrol, which is that one we've talked about, that you can actually supplement with that, and supplements have shown to be beneficial, or you can just get it from the source. Grapes and apples and all those types of things. Cherries, beets, bell peppers, anything red, purple.
Got it. That makes sense. Because typically migraine medications are vasodilators because they're trying to help restore blood flow to the brain, and that's typically one of the ways that migraine meds work, especially with migraines too. Like if we're nauseous, vomiting, have light implications, that typically that nervous system is involved with balance and like vertigo. So that's all neurologic processing from brainstem to cerebellum back here. And then if they get worse, the storms, that's cerebrospinal fluid. So that actually makes that's a really good nugget for me too. With migraine patients, especially if they come in flared up, but their body's still in a state of being able to recover on its own, what can they do at home to help facilitate that? From a food standpoint, almonds, cherries, beets, cranberries, and salmon. That's pretty good. What is magnesium's role with that?
As far as doing that, that's a good question. I can't tell you specifically what it's doing. So magnesium is involved in hundreds of chemical reactions in the body. So I believe it's just keeping the typical processes in our body functioning. Yeah, that's a good question. And what's interesting about magnesium, why it comes up so much, is that so many Americans are deficient in it. So much of the Western world is deficient because the good sources of magnesium are plant foods that we don't get very many of. I don't see a ton of people eating pumpkin seeds which I brought up. People don't eat as much fish. People don't eat as many leafy greens as we're supposed to. So a lot of us don't have enough magnesium. So it's one of the most common supplements.
I'm trying to look up magnesium's role with migraines. This said that some people, this is okay. Here's one. A drop in magnesium levels seem to cause blood vessels in brain to narrow or constrict.
Yeah.
That's weird because the first sentence is studies have found that people who have migraines tend to have lower levels of magnesium. Oh, okay. Then don't get headaches. Okay, so they're saying that low levels of magnesium can be a contributing factor to migraines. Magnesium blocks signals in brain that lead to migraines with an aura or changes in vision and other senses.
Yeah.
All that migraine stops certain chemicals that cause pain.
Yeah.
So like let me ask this. So like animals meat that contain fat.
Yeah.
Like ground beef.
Mm-hmm.
The fat in that's omega-3 fat, right?
And beef would be mostly omega-6.
Yeah,
mostly omega-6. And actually, depending on the fat content, it's definitely going to be a ratio of saturated fat and then omega-6 unsaturated fat. Grass-fed beef has a little bit of omega-3, not a huge amount, but a little bit. So that's why some people like grass-fed beef. So other things with omega-6s is going to be other muscle meats or poultry like chicken, turkey, nuts, seeds have lots of omega-6 unsaturated fats, which are fine. We do need that balance of omega-3 to ratio. So omega-6s are fine. We need them. And they do a lot of good things for ourselves. In fact, it's essential fatty acid. We wouldn't survive without any omega-6s. But over the last few decades, our consumption of saturated fats from whole sources, like somewhat low processed things like butter, there's not many ingredients in butter. So our consumption of things like butter has gone down, or whole milk, but our consumption of seed oils has gone up tremendously. And in doing so, it's very likely that that's contributed to inflammation and maybe some chronic disease, because we're getting all these highly processed oils that are very easily oxidized and creating carcinogenic compounds, whether they reach the smoke point or not. So if you're getting a nice balanced diet, you're usually pretty good with your omega-6 omega-3 ratio. But when you start eating a lot of fast food and restaurant food and packaged crap, then you're probably getting too many of the omega-6s. And yeah,
getting a lot of the omega-6s. So the main source of omega-3s then are fish and eggs. What about milk? Does milk have?
So fish is by far, especially the fatty fish, is like the highest, and it's more absorbable too. So DHA, EPA are the types of omega-3s that are very, very useful. Then there's there's some in eggs. They have a little bit, and there's certain types and brands of things that have a little bit more. So they might throw in some extra omega-3s to help boost that. Other animal products really don't have much. So like I said, milk isn't really going to have omega-3s. Beef, if it's grass-fed, will have a little bit. ALA is the plant form of omega-3. So you've got walnuts, chia, and flaxseed. You would have to have a tremendous amount of that for it to rival fish, but it still contributes, and it's still a very healthy food. Then you've got algae-derived omega-3. So someone that can't get omega-3s from other sources might take a supplement that's not a fish supplement. It might be algae-derived omega-3.
Got it. Very nice.
with a migraine, let me ask you. So there's different types of migraines, different types of headaches, different root causes. What all might be going on during a migraine? Are there, you said, blood flow getting cut off? Are there what was the word for that? Spazzing blood vessels in the head? Like, what's going on? Are the nervous system firing off more signals or impulses? Do you know some of the things that go on during a migraine or headache?
Yes. So really a migraine comes down to like three big pieces. It's kind of called a choke point. First one is blood flow.
Yeah.
Blood flow to our brain. Blood flow to our brain has to travel through our spine. And when it gets into the top bone of the neck, it gets convoluted. So it almost looks like a crazy straw or a water slide.
Yeah.
Trying to get its way up into the brain. And we have that on both sides through a really tiny hole on both sides.
Yeah.
If there's any rotation of that bone in the neck, it's going to kind of kink the hose. So instead of having an open flow of blood from our heart and our vascular system to our brain, it's going to get kinked off. When that occurs, our brain cells will not be receiving blood, which then means it won't be receiving oxygen.
Right.
Brain cells consume about 60 to like 70% of our body's oxygen that we inhale goes towards the cells in our brain.
Wow.
Third amount. And in addition, the reason why is because our brain cells chew up tons of energy. Like 60% of the energy generated in the body is from brain cells, just keeping things firing. So therefore it needs oxygen to create that energy, and we need red blood cells to deliver that oxygen to our brain cells. So if we have a kink in the hose that is constricting up flow of blood itself, then our brain cells are going to be having less oxygen, less blood flow, less oxygen.
Right.
Blood cells do not do well without oxygen. They're going to start dying off. So when they're starting to die off, what is their safety mechanism to try to drive some blood to you? It's in the form of like a fire alarm response. So our heart rate's going to go up. Our blood pressure is going to go up because it's trying to do whatever it can to send signals to force blood up and just try to shove it through this constricted tiny blood vessel. And that will present itself in the form of that fire alarm is a headache. That's our brain cells screaming, I'm suffocating. I need help. That's what a headache is, and a migraine. Piece number 2 of the tri-pronged choke point is cerebrospinal fluid flow. So we have a spinal cord, and then we have bones around it. It's almost like a castle in a moat. We have water fluid surrounding the castle, with the land around being your spine, the castle being your spinal cord, the moat being cerebrospinal fluid. So it's this fluid that nourishes and bathes our spinal cord. Spinal cord doesn't actually have vasculature in it. So it has to receive its nutrients from cerebrospinal fluid. That fluid is created in our brain. And the brain is a cavity that can hold it, but also it needs to drain out into our spine itself because the brain is consistently creating it.
Yeah.
And the issue is that our skull is a finite volume. Our skull can't expand and contract. It's a fixed bathtub.
Yeah.
So we need to but our brain is constantly creating and circulating, moving around this cerebrospinal fluid throughout our brain and throughout our spinal cord. If there's a rotation of either the first or the second bone in the neck, maybe something. So say this is like normal, and say I rotate. Let's rotate this end. Say I rotate. See how that space got less?
Yeah.
Being way open like that. That's going to decrease the amount of fluid flow going through that. So that is going to result in a buildup of pressure in your head, especially when storms come through. So the reason why migraine people tend to do a lot worse with storms is that storms have a low pressure front when it comes through. Same with temperature changes, have low pressure. And when we have low pressure in physics, you're going to have an increase in volume. So when we have storms come through, we have low pressure externally. That's going to cause in here generation of increased fluid volume, aka more cerebrospinal fluid. But since we have a misalignment of that second bone, it can't drain out. Therefore, it's going to get stuck and stagnate and build up in here. Won't actually be able to drain out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does moving around, stretching, yoga, does that do anything to drain out some of that pressure or fluid, like exercise?
I mean, all movement is good movement, I think. So I think that can help, but really it's not going to. The root issue, though, is that you have a bone that is stuck in one position and it can't move a certain way when you are moving your head around.
Yeah.
And so at baseline, that's always going to be there underlying. Now you can remove your stress load in your body to a point where it's below your stress threshold. Therefore, you won't be having symptoms, or get as low as possible. But if that underlying cause is there, you're always going to have the potential for that to come up. And then the last piece of that choke point is nerve flow. So this is the part that's trickiest to explain to people, but our body is split. This is actually going to be a really good explanation. Yeah. So our body is split into right and left halves. Same thing with all of our muscles. We have a left pectoralis major and a right pectoralis major. We have a left bicep, right bicep. Same thing for all the muscles in the neck. All these there's a bunch of tiny intrinsic muscles that are probably like this in length that are attaching skull to C1 and skull to C2. And those muscles need to be equal tonicity. So equal tautness, equal tone. Some people might have felt one muscle might feel stronger than the other or more stiff or firm.
Yeah.
We want these to be balanced. These muscles provide neurologic input into our brainstem. They're the only muscles in the body that have access to our brainstem. Neurologic input. If one muscle is tight and the other is lax, it's going to cause imbalanced firing versus equal firing. When we have imbalanced firing, the brainstem perceives that as stress. Stresses it out. And so it causes the brainstem to essentially fire up our stress response center in our brain, which is called our amygdala. It also is going to fire up our sympathetic nervous system. So if we're in that state, our brainstem can't actually regulate and flip the switch between sympathetic and parasympathetic. It's just stuck in sympathetic. With that, that is also going to impact the vasodilatory control center in our brainstem. And since it's stress, it's going to put a lot of our vasculature into a state of constriction, which now we're tied back and we're basically snowballing the blood flow issue. Because now we're having constricted blood flow, and now we're having decreased blood flow to brain, and now we're getting headaches. And those muscles are probably going to get constricted because if we had a fire alarm going off back here, blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up. If we had a fire alarm going off in your house, what happened to all your neck muscles? They get tight and tense. What does that do to blood vessels? It constricts them. It constricts space. Now we're having a triple whammy on blood vasculature to our brain. So it all just is a compounding effect. There's more to it too, but that's probably as in-depth as I need to go. That is one of the most in-depth explanations of the musculature side of things that I've probably gone on in a long time.
That's awesome. So interesting. And it just makes me think about how we're all stretching our neck muscles poorly. We got this bowling ball of a head, that weighs about 10 pounds, and we're just stretching over and over again by looking down at our phone or bad posture, is that contributing to muscle tonicity and problems?
Oh yeah, because if my head is stooped forward, I'm stuck stooped forward like this.
Yeah.
All of this is working. Like as soon as I did that, mine flexed up.
Yeah.
They're working so hard because now it all of a sudden, because you have like you said, 10-pound bowling ball. As soon as I have it, if I have a 10-pound bowling ball here, that's underneath my center of mass, it's gonna be a lot easier to hold up. But as soon as I go here, all of a sudden everything in here starts to flare up and fire up and gets super tight and tense. And in addition to, you can have these anterior muscles on the front part that can also contribute to pulling you forward, especially if you're stuck looking like this. And I find that most often, especially at grocery stores or just in public places, of teenage girls. See it all the time. Teenage girls are walking around with their shoulders internally rounded, and head forward.
Yeah.
Walking around like this instead of having their shoulders rotated back. Ideally, having some kind of slight curvature in your neck.
Right.
I have more of a military neck. Mine's more straight. I think that was from years of me trying to stand straight. When for me, I had such a bad upper neck misalignment. I used to be here, 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 and so I was stuck. I was stuck looking like this, and I was like, "Why am I looking like that all the time?" And so I would try to stand up straight like this, but I would still have this lean. Not knowing that my neck was just jacked up.
So I'm seeing all these things kind of on that topic. You're talking about this neck hump that we get. What's your thoughts on all these like neck pillows? What should we do when we're sleeping? Because if a third of our life we're either making things maybe worse or better, I don't know. What are your thoughts on like the right pillow or if how that much that matters?
Pillow definitely matters. I think the biggest thing is finding one that's comfy. Finding one that's comfy, but also finding the spot on the pillow that's comfy. Ideally, you want to have some kind of curve in the pillow to help reinforce curve in your neck. So, like for mine is kind of shaped like it's Tempur-Pedic, so the bottom part is flat, and then it's got a hump, and then a little bit, and it's got another hump.
Right.
Stuff like that.
So basically a little hump right here to keep your neck, because there's obviously that curvature in your neck. So if you're saying if it's maybe too flat or maybe even too high, I would think your head would just be like,
like I think too high is worse than flat. Like, because if I'm laying flat and I have and say this is the bed is flat with my back, and I have a wide pillow, it's gonna force my head up. And that's going to cause a lot of strain and stress on not only your neck, but also your spinal cord. So especially at sleep, we want to have our spinal cord be as relaxed as possible. An easy way to identify if someone has a misalignment of their neck is if they sleep on their stomach. Because if that's the only way they can fall asleep, I used to be that way. If that's the only way they can fall asleep, they're more than likely going to have to turn their head a certain way.
Right.
That's going to be unconscious, and that's their brain's way of trying to unwind that upper part of their brainstem and spinal cord to allow everything to flow through. So for me, all of mine rotates and drifts to the left. So this is my baseline, is having these twisted. So if I'm twisting this way, in order to get me back to neutral, I need to go what? I need to go this way. So almost all the time as a kid, teenager, young 20s, the only way I'd fall asleep would be on my stomach, laying to my left.
Yep. Interesting.
And when I hear that with patients, especially when I already know what their listing is, I'll ask them, is it on this one side? They'll be like, yeah, how'd you know? I'll be like, it's reproducible. It really is.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Dude, that's good. We gave you more than just foods for migraines. We told you what a migraine is, what type of pillow you need.
Yeah.
I think next time we should go in on a little bit about MRT migraines would be good.
Yeah.
a little bit about what to do when you already have a headache or migraine, versus how to prevent, and then what things to avoid food-wise, like what foods, what food chemicals can trigger it. I think that would be pretty good to go in on.
Yeah, totally. Definitely rock that. That sounds like a plan to me.
Great.
Good.
Well, we will see you guys next week for more Migraine Month.
Hey,
See ya.